Well, the saga continues. Pulling the motor apart, and the more I look at it, the more I'm thinking I might do like other guys were saying. They're pretty inexpensive engines to buy, and that's true. You can buy these engines for just a few $100s out of the truck. I don't want to do that. I want to buy a whole truck so I can check it like I did this one. When I bought this one, I bought it, I started, I ran it, I drove it, I got it up to operating temperature. I saw what the oil pressure was then. I saw watched the coolant temperature, the coolant level. I was able to do a compression test, a leak down. You know, I did a lot of checks and tests on this that I thought would give me a pretty good feeling it was a good motor. I couldn't have seen that previous damage from that rod. There's just no way for me to know that because it idled so smooth. I just cannot believe this thing idled that smooth. But whatever, it is what it is. So as I start to tear that engine down, I keep thinking about comments that were left that you might as well just go find another motor and drop in there, and it's a very good possibility I can get this engine torn down, and it'd be too far, it'd be not cost effective to fix. So in that respect, I found a few here that I've arranged. We're going to go look at tomorrow, and we'll see if they're an option of something that might be better, that's currently running with no damage. And it might be, if I need to do, if they are good motors, I could then go ahead, flip it over, you know, and check all the rods and main bearings, get a good look at it physically underneath, and as well as replace all the lifters, which obviously are a problem on these. It looks like to me that these engines crud up pretty good from what I'm seeing, and I think that crud gets in the lifters and plugs a hole where the oil comes in, and then the lifter can't pump up, and then it doesn't feed the rocker. That's just my take on what I've experienced taking this apart so far. So that being said, at least if I have one that rotates and didn't have any damage, if I got to go through one, that might be a better option. I don't know. So let's go see what we can find. I know this is just going to be a backup just in case, and I know a lot of guys are going to say, you know, why are you looking at backup before you get the other one apart? Because I don't like to waste time, and I'd like to be prepared. And the other thing is, I'm not a Chevy fan, but I think this is a fairly simple motor, which is why it's so reliable and so popular. Simple design, and it just works. And even failed, it still works. So if I don't need the engine for this, I'm sure I'll have another project around somewhere I can use it on. So let's go take a look at some trucks. So today I'm out in the rollback, and I'm going to go look at a 2006 Chevy pickup truck. It's an extended cab, four-wheel drive, short bed with a 5.3 in it. So I'm going to take a look at it. Brought my scanner so I can look for any codes and see what's going on with it and all that kind of stuff. If it looks like it's a good running, driving truck, I'm going to try and see if I can get it bought, and then pull that motor out and put it in the square body. The miles are a little higher than I hoped, but it is what it is. I found engines cheaper than a truck, but I can't hear them run, and I just don't trust. It's a shame in this world, you just can't trust people. You know, it could be a junk motor, but you know, it is what it is. Let's go. It's about an hour drive, so we'll get up here and get a look at it. Well, we're coming back empty. That was an utter waste of time. Complete disappointment. You know, before I decide to go look at something, I ask a lot of questions, and this is no different. I asked this guy a lot of questions about his truck and the condition and what I need, what I'm hoping for, and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I got answers, and the best I can do is ask questions. I can't make somebody tell the truth, you know. But I went to look at it because it was an 06 5.3, and it was supposed to be in really good shape, runs and drives well, so on and so forth. And in the ad, I noticed that it had a picture of each tire, and it said such and such brand of tire, 75% tread, and it showed aluminum wheels. So when I walked up to the truck, I noticed that those were not aluminum wheels, and then I noticed those are not the tires in the ad. And I I went up closer and I saw the door handle was broke, and I wanted to lift the hood, you know, check the oil. So he opened up the door from the other side, and then I pulled the hood release, and oh, it's a rough road. I pulled the hood release and got under the hood, and immediately checked the oil, and the oil was like grimy, like sludge, and it was low. And then I checked the coolant, and it was low too. I looked over the engine a little bit, looked here and there, and it just, yeah, it didn't give me that warm, fuzzy feeling for sure. So I went and got my scanner, and I went to go. He saw me coming back with my scanner from the truck, and he's like, check engine light's been on for, I don't know, probably a couple years now. He's like, but it's never been any codes I was worried about, and so I didn't do anything about it. And I went to go plug my scanner in, and my module would not communicate. So I messaged Justin and asked him, you know, where's the fuse, that diagnostic link, and he told me where it was. And so I was able to find the location, and when I lifted the cover under the hood for the fuse box, where the fuse is supposed to be is empty. There's no fuse in it. And I told him, I said, oh, here's the problem, there's no fuse here. So there was a fuse right not far away for what looked to be backup lights. And I said, I'll just take this 20 amp and put it in there. And so he's, I don't know if we should do that. Probably ought not do that. There's a problem with the cigarette lighter. I'm like, oh, well, we'll give it a shot. I said, if it blows a fuse, you don't have any more, I'll get one out of my truck. So I put the fuse in, and immediately my scanner lit up with no problems. And once it did, it started showing me the codes. And I started reading off the codes, and there was 13 of them. And the ones that stuck out in my head as most important were low oil level, oil pressure low, coolant low, coolant temperature high, knock sensor shorted low, misfire on I think there was 3 different cylinders that had misfires on them. And you know, that was enough for me. There was 13. I didn't bother going any farther because it's not what it is. And as I started talking about these codes, he's like, yeah, that wasn't a big deal, blah, blah, blah. He goes, you know, I wasn't worried about that. I wasn't worried about that. And he made it sound like he's owned this truck for years. And then as I'm pulled my scanner out and I'm getting ready to go, and he goes, man, it's a good running truck. I'm like, look, I can hear a tick in the motor. The oil pressure is only at 20 pounds, and it's cold. It's not even like you got up to operating temperature. You only got 20 pounds of oil pressure, you know? I said, this just isn't the one for me. And he's like, man, I'm telling you, he goes, I just bought it the other day, 2 days ago, and I drove it home 2 hours. It ran and drove great. And I'm like, well, there's a true story. You know, it made me, was wanting me to believe that it was his for years and years, and then the truth came out. But regardless, lies and deception. But it ain't for us, so we're empty. We're gonna go see if we can find another one. Maybe, hopefully, something a little bit better. All right, it's a new day. Back in the rollback, heading up to look at another truck. This one's supposed to have 90,000 miles on it, and it's a 5.3 four-wheel drive. The frame is bad, and the cab is bad at the cab mount. So we're gonna go take a look at it. I think you've already taken the catalytic converters off. Not really a big deal to me, but you know, it ain't great, but it's got low miles. It's supposed to run really good. No check engine lights, no noises, no nothing. It's supposed to be a really good motor. We're looking at the entire truck, so we're about an hour away. We'll see when we get there. All right, so this was what I believe to be an honest seller. Very upfront, very candid about everything, and turns out it's got less miles than he said, not more. Runs just fantastic. It's got a couple things that might need addressed, but the motor sounds good. It's only got 80,000 on it, so we made a deal on it, and now we're gonna head home. Frame is junk, cab's junk, doors aren't bad, bed's usable. I should be able to get a few bucks out of the bed, get it sold. There's no converters on it. Somebody cut them off long ago. But anyways, let's get it home. I want to buy this as a backup just in case we can't fix the other one or it's not cost effective. So let's head home. Pretty nice day so far. A little cloud cover, a little bit cooler. I just stopped and checked my chains, make sure everything was tight after I got on the expressway a mile or two, and pretty good. When I found this thing with this kind of miles, it's 81,000. I thought it was worthwhile to go look at it. Most of the rest of the truck isn't any good, but the motor, transmission, and the rear end, front end are, you know, salvageable. The cab's pretty much shot. The doors aren't bad. Believe it or not, all 4 speeds of the blower work. I'm surprised by that. That's the first one. So I hope to sell off some of the parts I don't need, like the four-wheel drive transmission, transfer case, the rear ends. It's got some decent tires on it. They're Firestone Transforce, and they're on steel wheels, but regardless, there's some tread there. They're 17s. You get a few bucks out of them. So anyways, I'll get it home, get a look at it. So clean. This one's a drive-by cable. It's in really nice shape. I mean, it has rust issues, of course, that's why I bought it. But I got the jump box we're gonna put on it. The battery's so bad that when you take the jump box off, it stalls. So obviously the idle iron might need a little time to come around, but let's get it on, get it started, get it off here. All right, jump box is on it. Got an aftermarket keyless entry. It's idling. It doesn't idle well. Look at that oil pressure, man. It has we got it to idle pretty good. Power steering pump's leaking horribly. The reservoir's rusted out. It's got a fuel leak. The one fuel line is rusted through. It's got plenty of rust issues, but get this off here ever so gently. Watching what I'm doing back here while I'm watching the camera. Sure don't back into anything. This fuel, he said, was 1.5 years, 2 years old. So oh, it sounds good. So when I put my jump box on this, the battery was so bad or shorted that it pulled the voltage down on my battery, which gave it a lower voltage reading to the ECM, and it didn't want to idle until the alternator had run long enough to start adding some charge to the battery in my jump box, because we were just like right at that threshold where it wanted to shut off. It was below the minimum voltage, but once you get it up above that voltage, it seems to be okay. And when I looked at it, I ran the truck till it was up to operating temperature, which is right about here, and it's 80 some degrees today. It was 80s, high 80s that day, and you know, it took about 15-20 minutes to get up to operating temperature, which is about what I expected. And then I put the scanner on it and I verified the scanner shows the same readings close as the cluster does, and it was good. So it had trouble idling, like it couldn't find its idle. I was able to drive it a little bit and make sure that it actually, you know, didn't have any noise or anything, or you know, I ran up temperature, so I make sure it didn't have any oil pressure issues or coolant issues or anything like that once it's warm. But I was able to run it enough to know the transmission shifts, the four-wheel drive shifter seems to be okay, the transfer case seems to be okay, the front axle, we got a wheel bearing. One of the hubs is growling. The rear end feels good. The brakes all work. It's got some really interesting brake lines on it, some routing, but it works. And when I looked at this, my thought was I was willing to spend up to a few $1,000 on a donor truck with the hopes that maybe I could sell off some of the things I don't need, recover a little bit of money. But yeah, I came across this one and I thought, well, I'm not going to recover a lot of money in parts. I don't need the transmission, I don't need the transfer case, the rear end, front end, or any of that, but maybe I get lucky and get, you know, some money back out in parts. Now, it has a fuel leak, which is pretty substantial. The line's rusted out. You can see how bad it's dripping. And I drove it. I just want to make sure it was okay, but that has something to do with the idling. But if you pay attention here, shuts right off, tells me it's got fairly good compression and like half a crank and she's running again. Now, understand that this, when I found this was going to be cheap backup. You hear the whining of the power steering. The reservoir is rusted and got a leak, so it's low on fluid, but the motor runs phenomenal. Fan clutch works good. Temperature feels good top to bottom. This is just a good, cheap insurance, and with low mileage, if I find something I don't like in the LS motor, the square body, after tearing it down and inspecting everything, if I don't like it, then, you know, I'll be able to have a donor on standby, because I believe these two intakes, you just swap one for the other for drive-by-wire and the EGR setup. We don't have EGR on ours, but I can just swap them out. It's got a broken exhaust manifold on this side. It's been wrapped with header tape, but even so, the thing runs really smooth and you don't hear a lot of exhaust. You can hear a little bit when you're underneath when I was inspecting it, but it's okay. You know, I don't think I'm gonna recover a lot in parts. The front clip is okay. It's got a decent front bumper, I guess. Got a little bit of rust there. The doors are good. The cab is junk. The bed, well, you can see how bad the cab is. See the two body lines here, how they don't line up. Bed's usable, tailgate's usable, but tires are usable, as all of them. Bumper's no good, and this side of the bed, it's beat up, but it's usable. That door's usable, cab's gone. So anyways, hopefully I'll be able to recover some money out of this. But I gotta tell you, I was really getting frustrated with looking at these trucks and all the people that were so deceitful, and that seems to be more prevalent in when you're looking at lower dollar amount things. And to me, once I stopped looking at the less expensive ones, I opened my wallet up a little bit more. The quality of people I was dealing with was by far better too, so that was nice. It was nice to have a conversation with the guy selling this and to be candid and honest about what he had experienced and this and that, and all up front before I came and looked at it. And that's the way I like to do things. So again, we're going to set it aside just in case we need it, but at 80,000 miles, wasn't a bad purchase. I was willing to go, when I started looking a little bit more, I was willing to go up to about 3,000 to get a good donor, because I figured by the time I go through that LS motor complete, I'm going to have 2,500 or better in that motor the way I would build it. So, and I know there's a lot of guys out there can build it a lot cheaper, and they can overlook a lot of things, and that's great for you. The way I'd want to build that motor, it's going to cost me 25 plus. That's just how it is, and I understand that. So anyways, we found one, so I think it'll be all right. We'll just put this off to the side here, and if we need it, we got it. If we don't, it ain't costing me nothing to sit there. It'll be just fine. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Catch you on the next one. I've never liked this jump box, but I use it just so I can get my money out of it. It's never performed like they said it would, and it just sits around. But Brandon used it yesterday, and he pointed something out that I didn't notice. You see that right there? There's a button right here you push. It turns a light on the end of the clamps, which he thought was pretty neat. The first thing I thought of was maybe if you spent a little bit less time on things that don't matter, you could have spent them on things that do matter, like making it perform like you claim it does.